Hey everybody, so I am sorry, I am running behind a little bit. We're not going to be on here that long. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're new, I know the lighting is not the best, so I always look like it's so dark. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video and also share if this is somewhat of importance or makes sense to somebody that you know that is talking about the housing industry, real estate, looking to buy or sell. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just do a quick recap of the year, see some things in which we saw throughout the year of 2025, and go through a couple articles real quick. And like I said, we're not going to be here for a long time. We're going to be here for a short time. And let's just jump right into it. So first, let's recap in regards to, hey, Miss H, Happy New Year's Eve. Hopefully you will have a, hopefully you stay up for the ball to drop and see things on the TV in regards to New Year's. I will probably be asleep, but Happy New Year's Eve. All right, so let's jump into this real quick in regards to the first thing we saw this year in 2025 as we do our recap was the mortgage rate. So as you guys know, in 2024, they were all saying how mortgage rates were going to come down in 2025, and they were expecting that it possibly would get in the mid fives, and in some senses, what happened to the mortgage thing? Okay, and in some senses, some people even predicted possibly close to the high fours, the low fives. However, as you guys know, mortgage rates did not slide down into the fives. I don't know why the thing keeps disappearing off the screen, but we'll see. She said too old for all that. Oh no, we're never too old. We are never too old, but I definitely understand it. Yeah, I'm gonna be asleep. Hey Dad, my dad jumped on as well. And so as they said, mortgage rates, I don't know why this keeps going down. Oh, it's because on the timer, that's why. Let me take it off the timer. Take the timer off. All right. Why is it on? Sorry guys, I don't know why this is on the timer. Take the timer off, Here we go. Save. Okay, so these are all on time. Okay. So mortgage rates. Back to mortgage rates. So like I said, they said that the mortgage rates were going to adjust in 2025, and now they're saying in 2026 that it looks like it'll probably stay in the low sixes, possibly hit the high fives or mid fives at the most as we trend down as we go throughout the year of 2026. Heading more into the fall, winter, they're probably expecting that the mortgage rates might slip a little bit. However, most of the people are predicting now that those rates will probably stay within the sixes. So let's share the screen real quick in regards to the mortgage rates, and we're going to read through this real quick. And say what it said: mortgage rates closed out 2025 at 15-month low. Right, and we're going to scroll down. It says mortgage rates continue to provide a bit of holiday cheer this week, drifting to the lowest levels of the year and setting up 2026 for more favorable rate conditions than seen at the start of 2025. Mortgage rates dropped to 2025 low. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me see. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. You guys can see it on your end while I'm going through this article. That's a little bit better, all right? Alrighty, and it says the 30-year fixed rate mortgage averaged 6.5% this week, the lowest level of 2025, according to Freddie Mac. Rates haven't changed much in the past few weeks, hovering around 6.2% last November. However, rates are significantly lower than a year ago when the 30-year rate averaged 6.91%, went to spike above 7% in mid-January. Rates have been lower than the level reported on December 31st since early 2024, according to Freddie Mac data. All right, so we're going to jump out of this and we're going to see what Freddie Mac's data was saying in regards to those mortgage rates being a little lower in 2025 compared to 2024. And so as you guys see right here, this is according to Freddie Mac. This is their tracker in regards to the mortgage rates and the data. It says primary mortgage market survey. So again, these mortgage rates, these are national average rates, right? They're not, that doesn't mean everybody is getting a 6.5%, doesn't mean that everybody's getting a 5.44 of your arm. It doesn't mean that every FHA is getting a 5 something percent, high fives, X, Y, and Z. This is just nationally across their, I guess you could say their median average per se as far as mortgage rates when it comes to Freddie Mac looking at the data and putting things together and saying that this is what they're typically seeing as far as the rates. So right here, we started in January 2025, and as you guys know, we are coming to the last day of the year, December 31st, 2025, and it's showing up here the 30-year rate right here, and then the 15-year rate, sorry, is moving as I'm trying to show you what. So it shows you how in January 2025, it was at 6.91%. The 15-year was at 6.13, and then it shifted up to the 7s. Then it went down, came back down right here, all the way into the 5s, and it boosted back up in April, back into the high 6s. And then it was in the high 6s for some more. Then it slowly started to go down, and it dipped to its lowest in September 18th, as far as the lowest in the 2025 year. This is when it dipped really low, and then it went back up, and then it kept hovering right here, and it kept dipping, and now we are lower per se, as they're saying, from the whole year in regards to that average type of national mortgage rate according to Freddie Mac. And so right here, when it comes to Freddie Mac, this is more looking at conventional. I believe this is what is going off of too as well. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, whoever's watching this on playback, just put the correct information below. But I believe they're going. This is just the conventional as far as where they saw the conventional mortgage rate at. So because Freddie Mac typically kind of takes up that data with conventional mortgages. So yeah, the 30-year fix right here, and then the 15-year rate. All right. So now we're going to get off of that real quick. And we are going to, Ms. H said, sorry, Ms. H, that rate is still good from what I had years ago. I would take that if buying now. Yeah, a lot of the rates, I don't know why it's so dark in here. Sorry, you guys. But the like we said before on one of the last slides, we discussed that the rates currently right now, they're not actually bad mortgage rates, right, to buy a house. It's just that the housing affordability is just extremely really high. So what's happening now is that particular rate, which is in the 6s or even in the high 5s, is seeming like a lot when it comes to pairing those together, those rates and also those home prices, and it's making the typical mortgage about $2,500 plus a month. Some people are getting maybe $2,100. Some people are looking out if they're getting a cheaper house, they might get maybe $1,900, $1,800 at the lowest. I think one of the clients I helped out, they got about close to $1,800, about $1,700 something a month with their mortgage when they went to the closing table. And so we're kind of seeing like that's possibly at the lowest, depending on where you're at, right? Every state is different. Every area in regards to home prices is different as well. So, but then traditionally, most people that are buying the new constructions or things like that, depending on the price point, they're seeing about $2,500, maybe $2,300 a month for their mortgage. So when you can combine those home prices with those rates, it becomes unsustainable for some people and not affordable, where they feel like it's better just to rent instead of buy a house, right? But according to people who bought houses in the 90s or even in the late 80s, different things like that, their interest rates were extremely high, 11%, 10%, 9%, 15%, so. Clark, so why is the 15-year lower than the 30-year? So the 15-year is lower than the 30-year because the 15-year is basically you're paying your mortgage off quicker. So when you pay the mortgage off quicker, they're okay with giving you a lower interest rate when the year gap is lower. So the 30-year is always going to have a higher interest rate because basically the risk is higher. Your risk as far as paying the mortgage and the loan being longer is higher than a 15-year. And so what happens is that they decide the financial institutions, the lenders, whoever is giving you these rates per se, they're like, okay, well, there's more risk in somebody that's holding a loan for 30 years, and then I can also get more back in that interest, so I'll give you a higher interest rate compared to someone with a 15-year where you can have a lower interest rate per se because the loan is not as long, the risk is not as much. And so that's why you'll kind of get it. That's why when people were talking about the whole 50-year mortgage, I don't know if you guys went and digged a little deeper, but they were trying to compare a 6% mortgage rate compared to a 30-year with a 50-year. But because the loan is longer, is 50 years, the interest rate would probably have been higher on the back end because the loan is longer. There's more risk there. That means I'm depending on you for 50 years to pay this loan without any defaults, without any life events happening, no unexpectedcies or any type of events occurring that might force you not to pay said loan. So the risk is bigger, is greater. So they're going to put a little bit more to make sure they can get back. They can try to, get back at least some of what they're lending you. So that's typically why you'll see the 15-year, the interest rates being lower compared to 30-year and all those different things. So hopefully that made sense. I don't know if that was confusing or not. Happy New Year, Donna, as well. Happy New Year. Thank you for coming and joining us on this New Year's Eve. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to be here too long because I know everybody got to celebrate. So I'm not going to be here but so long. Just want to go through, recap this year real quick. Wow, never knew that. Great info. I needed to know that. Thank you. No problem. So yeah, it's typically why you'll see that those interest rates. So that was the interest rate in regards to what was a problem in 2025. Recapping that, it started off high and we have adjusted down low according to that scale that we showed on the Freddie Mac chart. And I'm going to show you these real quick on the interest rate, for the interest rates real quick as far as Mortgage News Daily. And I want to preface this too because I don't want to get in trouble. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a lender. I'm not a mortgagor. However, just because understanding real estate, being in real estate, I can, have these conversations and everything. But if you want more in detail or in depth about mortgage rates and all those things like that, definitely talk to your local lender, mortgager, institution, because I don't want people to be, to be like, he's over here saying stuff and he's just a realtor. But needless to say, as you guys can see right here, this is Mortgage News Daily. As the 30-year fix is at 6.2, 15-year 5.76, the jumbo 6.37. If you guys don't know what those jumbo loans are, those typically are loans that are above a certain, like let's just say, I'm just going to give you a flat thing. Like let's say somebody's getting your loan that's $1 million. Even though there's criteria and conventionals, FHAs, as far as what constitutes as a jumbo loan, but I'm just going to put a flat thing out there and just say $1 million, even though it can be lower than that depending on how much you're putting down and all these different things. This is your ARM right here, 5.73. Your FHA is 5.85, and your 30-year VA at 5.87. And remember that FHA and VA is always going to be lower in terms of the conventional when it comes to that mortgage rate. So just be mindful of that as well. That's why sometimes if you talk to a lender, the lender might say, oh, let's look at different options. Even though you're coming to them to possibly get approved for a conventional, let's look at FHA. Of course, you can't get a VA loan unless you are a veteran per se. But when it comes to the FHA, the lender might tell you to look at both because your mortgage rate might be lower. Well, typically it will be lower for your FHA compared to your conventional. Most people want to do conventional because they want to put the 20% down, get rid of the PMI, which is the private mortgage insurance. And with FHA, you have the MIP, which is the mortgage insurance premium. So it's the same thing, just put backwards, and different things kind of move around when you start digging into the back end of everything. But FHA has the MIP, and typically most people put 3.5% down. Some people put 5%, 10%. However, most people will go conventional because they want to be able to get rid of that PMI and put 20% down. All right, so let's finish mortgage talk about rounding up the years when it comes to the mortgages. Let's take mortgage rates off the screen because we're going to jump into housing affordability. Let me take this timer off. I don't know why these things have timers on them. I didn't realize that, and I feel like I'm wasting time by taking these timers off. Sorry about that, you guys. I didn't realize they had a timer on them. I don't think to save. All right, housing. Sorry. Let me move this off while we're talking right now, and then I'll get to your question to Mrs. H. All right. So we'll go into housing affordability in 2025. So when looking for a rate and the amount of the years, we can discuss that with people financing a loan. Yes, you can, when you're talking to the lender, the mortgager, you can discuss to them in regards to how long you want to finance the loan for. You have, what is it? I think it's let me make sure before I tell you everything. I believe it's 2015. And at one time, let me make sure, 30. I just want to make sure I tell you right stuff because I don't want to get wrong stuff. option. So I can just tell you, but you can discuss that with the lender. This is which is that period. Let me see. Oh, look, they already on the thing. You can do, so you have, yeah, so you have your 20, your 15, your 20, your 30. Yeah, so that's what I was correct. So I just want to make sure, I just want to double check, make sure I'm correct. So yeah, so you can talk to the lender about those financing options. You can say, hey, I'm looking to possibly do a 15-year. Actually, a property owner that I helped him list his property in 2025. The buyer who bought the house was priced at around $400,000. They came and they actually put $200,000 down on the house, and then when they got to closing table, they only financed a 15-year loan on the house. And they did that, of course, to get a lower interest rate, but then also they will pay a higher payment. So let's just say somebody with a 30-year fixed, and then you did a 15-year, you might, depend on that rate, even though the rate is lower than the 30-year fixed, it might actually be a little higher as far as your monthly mortgage. But at the end of the day, or it might even out, just depend on where you're at and the price points and everything like that. But some people will do that because it's like, okay, let's just say the 30-year fixed, say your mortgage is $2,000, the 15-year with the 5 is maybe $2,200 or $23. I don't know. I'm just making up hypothetical numbers here. And so they'll say, okay, well, I'll just bear the extra $300 for the 15 years just to pay it down quicker. And then as you go forward, you can then talk to the lender about different options as far as possibly modifications and different things like that. But that was something that you would talk to a lender. But yes, you can definitely discuss that with the person financing the loan, what type of year you want on that loan. 30, 20, 15 year. Sorry. All right, so let's dive into what else we saw in 2025 was the housing affordability. So as you guys know, the housing affordability in 2025, and currently we're, with us being in the last day, it's still unaffordable. It's still unaffordable depending on where you want to live at. Like, again, I'm in the metro Atlanta area. Housing is very unaffordable. I don't care what nobody says. I don't care if they're saying it's not. I see it all the time. I have questions about this all the time. We have conversations. And when you're discussing with different people and you're actually on the ground doing the work and you're having these conversations, you know that people find it unaffordable. Like I said, I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a person that is in the education field. They only got approved for a certain amount of money, which is not a qualifying amount really in the metro Atlanta area to find something that makes sense, that's move-in ready. Most houses in that particular price point are basically tear downs, holes in the wall, holes in the floor. And so it doesn't make sense, nor would probably FHA approve said housing structures. So yeah. So housing affordability has touched 2020, from 2022 all the way to 2025. We're still seeing it. Depending on where you're at, you might see it staying steady currently in your market, or you might see it going down a little bit, softening, or you might see it going up. In the metro Atlanta area, it is softening a little bit. However, there are some things happening in real estate right now where people, and I think we talked about this on the last live, where basically people are having a house price, let's say, at $400,000. The agents are coming in, putting offers in with their clients on the buyer side. The buyer then in turn might, let's say they need $15,000 in closing costs. What's happening is that some of these agents are baking it into the price, saying like, well, my seller is not going to give you $15,000 in closing costs unless you go up in the price to $415,000. So then these agents are talking their customers into going up to $415,000 in order to get to $15,000. So on the back end, you'll see $415,000 where it closed at, and then in the closing cost, you'll see $15,000, which in total equates to $400,000. But you're seeing that on the back end. So what they're doing is that they're pushing the numbers up to bring them back down to make it look like houses are selling for more than what they are. But in reality, the back end, the numbers are being played around with closing costs and any type of concessions. Let me see. Miss 8 said, okay, now that makes sense. I was wondering about the payment with the year amount. Yep. So yeah, so with the housing affordability, you're still seeing a little bit of hesitation from these sellers, because these sellers are like, well, the house next door sold for $415,000. My house is at $399,000. I don't want to go lower than this because that house sold for more. But if the agent that they're working with would do their due diligence, they would say, well, the reason why that house sold for that amount, because really that $15,000 is closing costs. That's not the actual price in which it would have sold for. It would have sold $400,000 if the person didn't need that much in closing costs. And if also if that agent fought a lot to make the seller and the seller's agent understand that, hey, we're in a shifting market, depending on where you're at again. We're in a shifting market and prices are coming down. I'm not going to overpay for something just for some closing costs. We're going to figure it out in which we're going to get closing costs, but we're not going to overpay at the same time. All right, so it says right here, Housing Wire is saying the U.S. housing market in 2025, a normalization. Let's get through this article. It says after housing market, after housing market cycles defined by extreme shortages, rapid price appreciation, and frantic buyer competition, this year delivered something closer to the balance. Inventory climbed meaningfully, price growth flattened, and homes took longer to sell. Signs of a market settling into a sustainable rhythm, according to them. It says the national snapshot balance with a slight seller edge. So they're saying that nationally, on a national level, sellers are still gaining. And again, this is all very localized. It's all very based on your state, based on your city, or your county, your city, even their neighborhood. It could be a neighborhood down the street still holding steady, holding strong with price points compared to another neighborhood around the corner where prices are declining. I see it all the time in the metro Atlanta area where you have one side, let's just take a neighborhood in Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and then you go across to, like, say, Capitol Hill or Heights, or was it Capitol View or Capitol Heights? Make sure I'm saying it right. But you might go down, let's say, to Grant Park or Summerhill, and you see prices are continuously staying flat, maybe, seeing a little uptick. And meanwhile, Pittsburgh, you're seeing prices decline in regards to that, the values. So it says right here, the medium list price. Oh no, what is going on? The medium list price is $419,950. It says it's up 0.2% year over year. We're not worrying about the square footage. You said it's about 84. Sorry, guys. Excuse me. I don't put that much weight into square footage because ultimately your square footage will change depending on the price point of the house. And yes, some realtors will put weight into it when they go on a system like, oh, this house sold for this square footage, X, Y, and Z. Again, you need to know what's ultimately happening in your market, in that neighborhood, in that subdivision, where the price is going, right? We're not going to focus on the price per square foot, because if this house is $400,000, let's just say $400,000 again, and we know prices are trending down because maybe this house before was listed at $450 and it's slowly trending down, we're not going to be able to say, well, we're going to get it down to $119 per square footage. No, we're going to say, let's get it down according to where the other comparables and where we're seeing the market trend towards, right? So I don't put as much weight into per square footage. Some people do as far as price point. I don't. 84 days on the market. So it says it's up 9.1% year over year. It says the market action index 33.5%. I don't know why this computer keeps doing this. Sorry, you guys. Active inventory, 757,763 homes. Says up 16.4% year over year. The months of inventory is 2.8 months of inventory. So again, this is on a national level, and you're in the city and your state, it might be different. In Atlanta right now, we're around that balanced market. We're between 4 to 6 months. Once we go past 6 months, and we'll hit more of a buyer's market. Depending on where you're at in Atlanta, you might already be seeing, on the metro Atlanta area, you might already be seeing a buyer's market. It might already be at 6 months of inventory, 6.5 months, possibly 7 months. And then some other pockets, you might see it at 4 months, 4.4 months, 4.5 months. But nationally, they saying across all of America, when they total everything together, it's about 2.8 months of inventory on the market, meaning that if no other inventory came on the market, it would take, if no other inventory came on the market, we would only have 2.8. And basically within 3 months, if everybody bought the house, that's how long it would take to kind of sell all the houses. Price reduction, 39%. So they said 35% of active listings were reduced. The inventory made its comeback. It says one of the most consequential shifts of 2025 was supplies. Active inventory rose more than 16% year over year. So, we were told that there was a shortage, housing shortage. And again, this becomes another thing that's local to where you live at in regards to a shortage. There are some states, there are some cities where there is a housing shortage, right? I have a house that popped up in a certain subdivision, a neighborhood that you always dreamed that you wanted to be inside of, and there's only one house that popped up in that subdivision, and there's about 10 people that want that one house, right? Because it's a neighborhood that they've always wanted to be in, so then that creates that shortage there, right? So I know in Jersey and different areas there's not as much of a lot of building per se, so there is a smaller, there's less inventory on the market compared to the Sun Belt states, which is Georgia, Texas, Florida. You see more housing. So with that being the case, there is not much of a housing shortage in those areas. We'll scroll down. These are just talking about the different markets, where the money moved to. So they're talking about where the money moved to as far as people moving around. So we will, and so we're not going to worry about that. Right here it says, look ahead by the end of 2025, the housing market had largely reset expectations. This wasn't a year of explosive growth or dramatic declines. It was a year of recalibration. For housing professionals, the takeaway is clear. Success. This environment depends less on riding market momentum and more price accuracy, local expertise, and understanding where demand remains resilient. All right, so that's according to Housing Wire. That's their retake or recap of 2025. And so again, when it comes to house affordability, we still know, depending on where you're at, the houses are still unaffordable to some people, some professions, and also as far as the entry-level professionals, professions, right? People come out of college, people that tend to medium home buyers around their 40s. So we're seeing that the housing affordability is stopping the momentum. Most people back in the day were buying in their 20s, their mid-20s, their late 20s, and there's still some people doing it here and there, or maybe in their early 30s, but we're seeing more people stretch it out longer to make more decisions and make sure they're not in any type of debt or feel like they're stuck somewhere. And so that's why they made this big cool roster that millennials or Gen Zers per se, they don't want to own nothing. They just want to rent because they want to be nomads. They want to travel the world. No, they do want to, buy a house. They do want to create. They do want to establish themselves somewhere. However, the house is just unaffordable depending on where they live at to make them to be able to establish anything, and then also the entry level job amount as far as your salary. If you're entering with a salary of $30,000, you went to college, you have $30,000 in debt. A house is dang near $500,000. You got a car note. If you end up having a child and all these other things, it's unsustainable, it's unaffordable. So housing does need to kind of soften and decline if possible. But we'll see what happens in 2026. Again, it just depends on where you're living. You might see a decline, or you might just see something that holds steady. All right, let's go into new construction. So in 2025, as well as when it came to new construction, if you guys don't know, new construction actually saw a let's do this real quick. Sorry. New construction says new home sales surged in August as builders boost incentives to cut prices. So in August, new construction saw a boost, and now we're in December. It says sales newly home surged to a 3-year high in August as home builders boost their use of buyer incentives, breathing life into sluggish summer housing market. So as you guys all know, during summertime of 2025, and just summertime, regardless, around the whole housing market, from resale, new construction, it was very sluggish. It was minimum movement because home prices are getting unaffordable and still are unaffordable in some cases, some people, right? We're seeing more of the wealthy people buy, but even high-priced homes, luxury homes are sitting longer as well now because some of these wealthy people see things happening right now in the real estate market back in, and they're not buying like maybe the average American might be trying to buy right now, right? So needless to say, in order for new construction to kind of move their inventory, they were offering big buyer incentives. And as we stated before, one is live, D.R. Horton, which is a big home builder, they were offering incentives as low as a buy down at 0.99% for the first year, 1.9% second year, 2.99% the third year, and then with a 3-1 buy down that last year, it could lock at 0.9% for the life of the loan for the 30-year fix. But we see a lot of them doing that, a lot of them offering buyer concessions as far as closing costs, $10,000 in closing costs, $20,000 in closing costs, and now some of them are even allowing to take some money off the price of the home and also giving incentives. So a lot of them are these new constructions in 2025. They started to say, okay, we need to move this inventory. We started building this. We the zoning, we got the permitting, everything done. It took us about a year or two, depending on where you're at, the permit laws, the zoning laws, wherever you're at. It took them X, Y, and Z amount of time. They excavated the dirt, the trees, the dirt. They put everything down. They started laying foundation. They started pouring, drywall setting in, built that model, got a new sales agent in there to start selling these construction homes as they're being built. And what they were seeing is that people were coming and seeing them and saying, oh, this is beautiful. How much is this worth? Oh, I can't afford to pay this. And they were not getting any sales. So they said, okay, how do we make people want to buy? And the narrative throughout 2025, and you'll probably see it in 2026, was, hey, we need to buy, the interest rates need to be lower. The mortgage rates need to be lower. We need them lower. So what these builders were doing, they were buying for rates down, and they were giving incentives. It says right, and then also with that, they started cutting the prices, and when they started cutting the prices, now you have new construction, which is lower than some of these resale homes. So it says last month's sales gains were broad-based, with sales rising 72% in the Northeast, 13% in the West, 25% in the South, 5.6% in the West compared to July. So again, this is going back in August. So we're going to get down to in September right here. Let's get to September because it's close to December. In September, 39% of builders reported cutting prices, up from 37% prior to the month, and the high percentage in more than 5 years, according to the National Association of Home Builders, Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. Builders remain more willing than individual sellers to adjust prices, but even with these concessions, the market is still gouging how much demand can be coaxed back. Says Realtor.com senior economist Anthony Smith. Says the use of sales incentives such as a rate buydowns, closing cost assistance also remains high, with 65% of builders saying they use incentives this month. Little change from 66% in August. So again, they're using these incentives to get people in there. Most people don't realize, we talked about this on one of our last lives, that most of these people that are getting into these houses and they're getting these buy downs and they're getting these closing cost incentives, about, I'm gonna say about 10% are probably going to go underwater. It's probably higher than that, but they're going to be underwater, right? Because as time keeps going on and prices have to adjust down some more to get more people in these homes to unload this inventory, and you bought higher and prices are adjusting down, and you're also getting these big buy down and these closing cost incentives. And some of these people, and I don't know if you guys know, some realtors on social media, they're like, oh, I'm getting my client into this house with no money, bringing no money to the closing table or doing anything to the closing table. And it's like, you always want to have some type of stake in the game when purchasing, because you don't want to go in not having any type of stake in the game, because what ends up happening is that typically if you're not buying under what the price was listed at, you're going to go in and possibly be underwater within the next couple months. And then as time goes on, you'll gradually get yourself out of being underwater, because as you know, as time goes on, we go up, we go down, we go up, and eventually housing will go back up soon in the future, depending on where you're located, and you'll regain that type of equity. But these homes and most of these new constructions are putting people in situations that they probably don't realize. A new home, well, some of them do realize, because these people that bought in 2022, 2023, they're trying to sell now because they can't afford it after those after the property taxes adjusted from the land not being estimated correctly with the new structure as far as for the correct taxes. So the taxes went up, and then on top of that, some people might not have. If you're not in the state where you're for a homestead exemption, you can't exempt yourself from those taxes. And then on top of that, you have insurance going. Insurance is going up over time, home insurance, and then on top of that, those buy downs that you were possibly bought into, if you didn't get a fixed rate at a certain amount, your buy downs are not climbing up. So you're getting a higher your buy downs going up from 0.99% to 1.99%. Taxes are going up, home insurance is going up. It's lending into a disaster basically, and people are finding themselves trying to get out of those homes now and want to sell, and now they realize they can't get out, because as they're trying to sell, new construction is being built, it's lower than what you bought it for 3 years ago. Either you were new construction, and on top of that, you have other homes in your area adjusting prices down. So now you're looking at yourself like, wow, I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. And some of these people, unfortunately, depend on the circumstances, or they're one on the house market, they're like, I'm just going to wait to try it next year. And the summertime, the springtime again, because that's when they say seasonally that's the best time to put a house on the market. And or some people are unfortunately kicking the can down the road, and they will ultimately foreclose if they cannot gain control of their mortgage and being able to sustain themselves. So it says right here, new homes now cheaper than previously owned homes. New home prices are typically higher than those of existing homes, but the long-standing trend has reversed in recent months, with new homes now about $20,000 cheaper than resale homes. And as you guys can see that we talked about before, and it says the supply of new houses for sale at the end of August was 490,000 on a seasonally adjusted base, down 1.4% from July. At the current sales pace, it represented 7.4 months of supply on the market. So that means that it's buyer's market. Once we get past that 6 months, as according to how they lay out what is a buyer's market, seller's market, and balanced market. A seller's market typically under 4 months, a balanced market is between 4 to 6 months, and anything above 6 months is typically a buyer's market. So they're saying right now, new construction, depending on where you're at, again, this is all according to your state, your city, your metro area. If you know that there's a lot of new construction going on right now where you live at, if you're going into any of these new construction sales sites, I know they're going to hammer you to death and they're going to try not to give it to you for a price that makes sense to you. But go in there and hit them hard, baby. Hit them hard. Make sure you get everything that makes sense. Make sure they drop that price in the new sale. Make sure you're doing those comparables in the area to see, even with them dropping that price and them giving you the buy, those concessions. Make sure it makes sense. So, because we don't know where the bottom is going to be at in regards to home prices adjusting down depending on where you live at. So you want to get a good point to kind of start at, so it can make sense as far as going forward if prices keep adjusting down depending on where you live at. People price adjusting down, you won't be too far underwater. The goal is that you don't want to underwater at all. However, we don't know where the bottom is going to be at and how far it might adjust down. So you just want to get somewhere that makes sense. Where if it's at $400,000 and you get them down at 350, if it bottoms at 330, even though we don't want you to be underwater, but by then if you got it at 350, if you put about 20% into it, you might be literally on the edge of not being underwater, or maybe $1,000 underwater, or something like that, or you might not be underwater at all, depending on how much you put down, depending on where you can get them to sell you that house at. And hit them hard, baby, depending on where you live at. That's how I'm looking at it now. Hit them hard. Of course, you can't go and swinging too hard. Like, you can't, like, a house can't be $1 million and you're like, I'm only giving you 200,000. You can't do that. Like, you know, make sense of what you're doing as far as hitting them hard. But definitely that. So we saw the new construction this year as well. So we'll get off of the new construction. Did my thing. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. And we'll head into the last thing we saw in 2025, which was turn this timer off again. I don't know what time it is. Which was, sorry, y'all. Let me see. I got to turn this timer off again. Which was, again, we saw taxes and we saw HOA fees and we saw all these things kind of continuously climb, and we saw some things kind of come in place in regards to that, different states, as far as when they're talking about property taxes, we call home insurance. Did I just freeze you guys? Let me know if I froze. Sorry, because my computer froze on my end. But we saw the property taxes, we saw HOA fees, we saw home insurance kind of increase throughout 2023, 2024. Most of the property taxes increased because home values were being assessed at a higher price point now. So you saw an increase of property taxes. The home insurance also increased because of those replacement costs in some instances, where a house that might had typically been $200,000 house is now $500,000, which means that it would cost them more money to replace it if something was to happen to the house. And then those HOA fees also increased in regards to the inflation, right? We see if you had a pool in your community, if you had any type of expenses in your community, those companies might have went up, and in turn the HOA might have went up, or also you might have saw some HOAs that were just frauding people regardless. And also people feel the same way with the property taxes, as far as they're uncontrollably high, they're not, it's not sustainable, and people who have paid off their mortgage already, they're like, well, my taxes are astronomically high, and so it almost hurts them in regards to them having that mortgage paid off, and especially if they're someone of an older age and you're on a fixed income that you're adjusting to, when your salary that might have been in the 90s compared to what's happening in 2025, where prices are going up, and that fixed salary, that pension, that Social Security, whatever, does not equate to how the money is moving down, right? So we're seeing people slowly but surely having to let go or losing property, which shouldn't happen, right? The purpose of buying a house and being able to own a house is to be able to sustain it until whenever you want to sell it, or if you should happen to pass away, and if you want to like hand it down to someone else. Miss H said, how are you feeling about everything going into the new year? So in regards to everything in the new year, Miss H, I want to feel optimistic, right? I want to feel of some type of hope. I know some people have reached out to me in regards to looking to possibly purchase in 2026. I've also had a conversation with the seller who, unfortunately, they did buy the house in 2022, but they might have to readjust and downsize. So they're going to have to possibly sell in 2026, which they will have to adjust their price down for. They'll be put on the market for less than what they bought it for. So I want to feel optimistic for people. I do feel like most people, if you're buying, just make sure, depending on where you're at, understand what your market is doing, what your locale is doing in regards to the home prices, in regards to property taxes, in regards to all this thing that makes up what your mortgage will look like, the maintenance costs of your homes, all those different things. Take those into account. So you make a good decision on what you buy. But I think what 2026 we'll see that people have learned, hopefully, that what they were doing in 2022, 2023, and 2024, we can no longer do. And hopefully 2025 was a year of looking at stuff in the mirror and seeing that, hey, something has to change. And hopefully 2026 will be that starting of that change. I don't feel like we'll really see that onset of change until 2028, to be honest. But I'm hoping that 2026 will start to lead to that. And in regards to leading to that, we'll see some type of adjustability, some type of correction, and possible affordability as time goes on throughout the years. But I feel like once we hit 2028, 2029, we'll start to kind of see some adjusting being more clear. And I know some people don't want to wait that long. And then they're also scared, like, because they're like, well, if I wait that long, depending on where I live at, prices might go up. And again, it depends on where you live at, right? So just talk to your local realtor, your professionals in those areas, and just see how prices are adjusted, and do your own research if possible to see that. But I'm gonna be optimistic for 2026 going into the new year as far as how I'm feeling, and see what we can do to help people when it comes to ownership or wanting to let go of ownership, right? And just go back into the world as far as feeling a sense of freedom if they're just renting. But that's how I'm feeling. How are you feeling, Miss H, and anyone else who's on here? Because I don't know who else is left on here. I know it's only two of us. So, but this is in regards to property taxes. U.S. property tax changes come in 2026. So this says the property tax reform has been a hot topic across this country, especially in Republican-led states, as lawmakers and politicians try to offer relief to homeowners struggling with higher bills. Experts believe it will remain at the forefront in 2026, with many states continuing to push for complete elimination of property taxes. So states are trying to push for property taxes to eliminate them. Of course, we heard Florida State as one of them right here. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who will end his third-year term next year and will not be able to run for re-election, has repeatedly said he supports the complete abolition. Hold on, I'm saying it right. Abolition. Sorry, Jesus Christ. Property taxes in the state of. And property taxes in the state. Jesus, I'm getting all tangled up. So Florida is one of them. Illinois, they said a bill in SB 5/1862 introduced the Illinois State House early in 2025, known as the 30-year homestead exemption, amended that the state's property tax code exempted homeowners who have owned and lived in their primary residence for 30 years from paying property tax on the home. So again, I'm just reading a brief overview synopsis on this. If you guys want to know more and kind of go into depth in regards to this, Newsweek published this article, and it's called U.S. Property Tax Changes Coming in 2026. And then we have in other states real quick in regards to Kansas right here. They say Kansas is looking into something in regards to property taxes, Ohio as well. Pennsylvania says there is currently a proposal in Pennsylvania Senate Bill SB 929 to eliminate the collection of school taxes across the state. The bill would prevent school districts from collecting property taxes beginning on July 1st, 2029. So that's a long time away, July 2029. But like I said, I feel like that's where we'll probably see that relief. And of course, Texas, they're having a reform down there in regards to property taxes. But I feel like that's going to be the time in which we'll start to kind of see relief in the housing market, depending on where you're at again, because again, real estate is local to your area. But I feel like in Metro Atlanta area, we'll probably start to see a change come 2026 as far as people wanting to let go and adjust prices accordingly. I feel like we'll really start to see a lot happen in 2028 in the Metro Atlanta area, to be honest, the 2027 into 2028. That's just what I'm looking at. I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball, but just from the data that I'm looking at, that's what I'm I don't want to say just suggesting, but that's what I'm thinking. I should say, sorry. All right, so other than that, that is a recap of 2025. Hopefully we touched on some of those key points. Again, we talked about new construction, mortgage rates. We talked about housing unaffordability, or affordability or unaffordability. We talked about those property taxes, those HOA fees, those home insurance prices, everything going up. So we're hoping in 2026 that things will adjust accordingly to allow more affordability for homeowners and even home sellers. So I want to thank everybody again for jumping on here and being a part of this live. And as we end off 2025, it is December 31st, and we make it into 2026 next year. And I will see you guys come January, I don't know what the Sunday is, but January 2026. Thank you again, Ms. H. Have a good night. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving Eve, and I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye. Don't forget to, like, subscribe, and share the channel, or share the channel in the video if it makes sense for somebody looking to buy or sell real estate. Take care.